Good morning. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is David Okun. I've been speaking about the European Union as a political system of Europe. I've also been linking it to the cost of living, which has been the topic of discussion since this program began. And been explaining Europe as an extension of the capitalist system, and I've also been explaining that capitalism is now marketized, which actually makes capitalism more extreme to the right wing spectrum of political uh, ideology, political thinking. So you have the market now controlling the government. We elect government, but the market is the what is controlling the government now. So even if there is a problem such as the cost of living, the government struggles to control the country such that the government cannot support public services. uh, Decisions involving funding for public services is restricted because the government is no longer in control of the country in terms of the economy. The market system tells the government what to do, and market is actually interested in making money and accumulating wealth for the few and not to the many. And that's why there's the cost of living. That's the primary cause of the cost of living in this country as a global crisis, and of course in Europe. And Europe, like I said, is the driver of globalization. We have been looking at different elements of European Union, and I'm going to look now at member states. These are countries of Europe which has joined the European Union, and they are called member states of the European Union. And their function is to support the organization of the EU to do what it needs to do, and they are on the map. And so there is a process of enlargement for the European Union, and this actually help the European Union to grow and into a bigger organization. The European Union started as uh, a, 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 a community of 6 nations, and has now grown to about 22. And the first 6 nations to create the European Union were Belgium, France, West Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. And now it has grown to 27 states. It's something called accession of countries into the European country. They accede the European Union to become a party to the within the founding treaties. Uh, you know, these countries then subject themselves to the privileges and obligations of the European membership. When you join the EU, you are actually you have privileges coming with the environment, but also obligations. And you don't join the EU, you don't gain the membership for free. So this entails a partial delegation of sovereignty to the institution in return of representation within these institutions, a practice often referred to as pooling of sovereignty. Like I said in the other videos, if you haven't subscribe to my channel. If you have time, watch these videos because they are connected. So I've argued elsewhere that if you join the European Union, you lose your sovereignty. Although this is actually not stated clearly. It is a fact that if you join the European Union, you lose your sovereignty. Sovereignty is important because it identifies your country. A country without a sovereign um, identity loses its existence. It ceases to exist. Now, if you're a country without its sovereignty, you are no longer a country. So, in some policies, there are several member states that ally with strategic partners within the union. Um, Example of such alliances include the Baltic Assembly, the Benelux Union, the Bucharest Nine, the Creva Group, the EU-made group, the Lublin Triangle, the New Hellenistic League, the Three Seas Initiative, the Visegrad Group, and the Weimar Triangle. So these are different alliances within the Baltic, um, within the European Union, actually. So several overseas territories and dependencies of various member states are also formally part of the European Union. To become a member country must meet the Copenhagen criteria defined at the 1993 meeting of the European Council in Copenhagen. These require a state democracy that respects human rights and rule of law, a functioning market economy, and the acceptance of the obligation of membership, including EU law. Evaluation of a country's fulfillment of the criteria is the responsibility of the European Council. The four countries forming the European Free Trade Association (EFTA) are not EU members, but are partly committed to the European economy and regulations. Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway, which are a part of a single market through the European Economic Area, and Switzerland, which has similar ties through partial treaties. The relationship of the European microstates, Andorra, Monaco, San Marino, and Vatican City, include the use of the euro and other areas of cooperation. So you have countries like Austria, countries like Bulgaria, Belgium, acceding in at different times. Croatia, uh, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland. You have states like France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, you have Luxembourg, Malta, Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Spain. You have Sweden, and a total of about 27 member states. So these are actually the membership of the European Union. There are different subdivisions within the European conglomeration, and so you have subdivisional member states, which are actually based on the nomenclature of territorial units for statistics, not a geocode standard for statistical purposes. The standard adopted in 2003 is developed and regulated by the European Union and thus only covers the member states of the EU in detail. The nomenclature of the territorial units of statistics is instrumental in the European Union structural and for locating the area where goods and services subject to European public procurement legislation are to be delivered. So you have some information on the territorial units, um, statistics divisions, and you have NATS 1, NATS 2, NATS 3, and you have, uh, for example, you have places like the Schengen area. I'm going to look at the Schengen area. These are actually countries de facto participating and members of the EU committed by treaty to join the Schengen area in the future. The Schengen area is an area comprising 27 European countries that have officially abolished all passport and all other types of border control at their national borders. So, if you look at my other videos or talk about worlds without borders, if you're a member of the European Union, you travel freely. You actually achieve the right of free movement as a person of the European citizenship, being an element within the wider area of freedom, security, and justice policy of the EU. It mostly functions as a single jurisdiction under a common visa policy for international level travel purposes. This area is named after the 1985 Schengen Agreement and the 1999 Schengen Convention, both signed in Schengen, Luxembourg. So we looked in the previous videos, we look at the constitutional arrangements which actually impact on how the European Union is run. So of the 27 EU member states, 23 participate in the Schengen area. Of the 4 EU members that are not part of the Schengen area, 3, Bulgaria, Cyprus, and Romania, are legally obligated to join the area in the future. Ireland maintains an opt-out and instead operates its own visa policy. The 4 European Free Trade Association (EFTA) members states as Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland are not members of the EU but have signed agreements in association with the Schengen area. So and they enjoy the free trade participation within the European Union, but they are not actually EU members. Also, 3 European microstates, Monaco, San Marino, and the Vatican City, maintain open borders for passengers traffic with their neighbors and are therefore considered de facto members of the Schengen area due to the practical impossibility of traveling to or from them without transiting through at least one Schengen member state. So we have candidate countries, a potential enlargement of the European Union. These are countries expected to join the European Union in the near future. These are 8 countries that are recognized as candidates for membership: Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Moldova, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, Turkey, and Ukraine. Norway, Switzerland, and Iceland have submitted membership applications in the past, but subsequently frozen or withdrawn them In addition, Georgia and Kosovo are officially recognized as political potential candidates and have submitted membership application. So Europe is growing, not actually shrinking. And if you watch my other videos, I've actually um, explained extensively the background of the European Union. So we talk about former members. Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty provides the basis for a member to leave the European Union. So that's how Britain left the European Union. After Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty provides the basis for a member to leave the European Union. Two territories have left the Union. Greenland, an autonomous province of Denmark, withdrew in 1985. The United Kingdom formally invoked Article 50 of the Consolidated Treaty of the European Union in 2015 and became the only sovereign state to leave when it withdrew from the European Union in 2020. We talked about the Brexit. Brexit is a major factor in creating the cost of living as a crisis. When Britain left Europe, it created a lot of economic problem for people who need help from the government. And when people don't get the right help from the government, then they suffer the cost of living. Geography. Let's look at geography. Geography of the European Union. Um, The EU's member states cover an area of 4,233,262 square kilometers, an equivalent of 1,632,476 square miles. The EU's IS peak is more blanc in the grand hubs. 4,810.45 meters, 15,784 feet above sea level. The lowest point in the EU are Lemef, Jordan, Denmark, and Zuid plus Polder, Netherlands, at 7 meters, 23 feet below sea level. This is the topography. The landscape, climate, and economy of the European Union are influenced by its coastline, which is 65,993 kilometers, 41,006 miles long. This is the size of the area, including the overseas territories of France, which are located outside the continent of Europe, but which are members of the European Union, and the EU experiences most types of climate from Arctic, Northeast Europe, to tropical French Guyana, rendering meteorological averages for the EU as a whole meaningless. The majority of the population lives in areas with a temperate maritime climate. Northwestern Europe and European Europe as Central Europe, a Mediterranean climate. Southern Europe, and a warm summer, continental or boreal climate. Central Europe and Southeastern Europe. We talk about the climate. Talk about the climate. The climate of the European Union is of temperate continental nature, with a maritime climate prevailing on the western coast and a Mediterranean climate in the south. The climate is strongly conditioned by the Gulf Stream, which warms the western region to levels unattainable at similar latitudes on other continents. Western Europe is oceanic, while Eastern Europe is continental and dry. 4 seasons occur in Western Europe, while Southern Europe experiences a wet season and a dry season. Southern Europe is hot and dry during the summer months. The heaviest precipitation occurs downwind of water bodies during the prevailing westerlies, with higher amounts also seen in the Alps. Tornadoes occur within Europe but tend to be weak. The Netherlands experiencing disproportionately high number of tornadic events. Let us look at the environment of Europe, of the European Union. We will also look at the European Environment Agency. And in what I said in terms of the institution, what you find within nation states also is actually integrated within the European Union. In 1957, when the European Economic Community was founded, it had no environmental policy. Over the past 50 years, an increasingly dense network of legislation has been created, extending to all areas of environmental protection, including air pollution, water quality, waste management, nature conservation, and the control of chemicals, industrial hazards, and biotechnology. According to the Institution of European Environmental Policy, environmental law comprises of 500 directives, regulations, and decisions, making environmental policy a core area of European politics. European policymakers originally increased the EU's capacity to act on environmental issues by defining it as a trade problem. Trade barriers and competitive distortions in the common market could emerge due to the different environmental standards in each member state. In subsequent years, the environment became a formal policy area with its own policies, actors, principles, and procedure. The legal basis for European EU environmental policy was established with the introduction of the Single European Act in 1987. Initially, EU environmental policy focused on Europe. More recently, the EU has demonstrated leadership in global environmental governance. Example, the role of the EU in securing the ratification and coming into force of the Kyoto Protocol despite opposition from the United States. So there is a politics of environment. Environment is always in conflict with the idea of development, and there is a politics of environment which affect issues such as the cost of living. Because if you don't develop the economy, then there is bound to be problem for the majority of the population of the world. The same problem is in the European Union. And like I said in the other videos, there is always a tendency to look after people with money in terms of even development. There is a parallel economy operating around the world where more and more we are seeing government in conjunction with the private companies paying attention to produce goods and services for the consumption of the super rich, who are actually the few, about 10 or even less percent of the population. So we will be seeing this problem where global resources are being hoarded with a view to preventing the majority of the population to access wealth. If you think about wealth, now we should have more wealth than maybe 10,000, 100,000 years ago, when development was still in its infancy. Now, we have been accumulating wealth over the years, and you ask yourself, where has all the wealth gone? The wealth, if created, the wealth you know, go nowhere. It's always there. It's accumulated. Keep piling. That's why capitalism is now more relevant. Because capitalism is a accumulation of wealth. And the difficulty with wealth management and including its politics is actually failure of the culture, human culture, where states actually focusing on war, not peace. And that's the basis of culture. The culture is like all the ingredients which has the potential of creating a peaceful relationship, a peaceful world. And we are far off from that in terms of progress. And I've said this in different videos. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe to support it and share with family and friends. Click the notification bell and watch the videos and let me know what you think. Leave a comment below. This international dimension is reflected in the EU's sixth Environmental Action Program, which recognizes that its objectives can only be achieved if key international agreements are actively supported and properly implemented, both at EU level and worldwide. The Lisbon Treaty further strengthened the leadership ambitions. The EU law has played a significant role in improving habitat and species protection in Europe, as well as contributing to improvements in air and water quality and waste management. Mitigating climate change is one of the top priorities of EU environmental policy. In 2007, member states agreed that in the future 20% of the energy used across the EU must be renewable and carbon dioxide emissions are to be lower in 2020 by at least 20% compared to 1990 levels. In my opinion, I think the problem of environment should now be improved in terms of solving it, mainly because of the available technology, also the amount of wealth we have. We can actually invest in jobs related projects at the same time as protecting the environment. In 2007, member states agreed that in the future 20% of the energy used across the EU must be renewable and carbon dioxide emissions to be lower in 2020 by at least 20% compared to 1990s level. In 2007, the EU emitted 9.1% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The European Union claims that already in 2018 its GHM emissions were 20% lower than in the 1990s. The EU has adopted an emission trading system to incorporate carbon emissions into the economy. The European Green Capital is an annual award given to cities that focuses on the environment, energy efficiency, and quality of life in urban areas to create smart cities. Because of air pollution, a lot of people during summer travel into the countryside to breathe clean air. So the issue of air pollution is real, but the issues involving politics and the economy and businesses has never been straightforward. In the 2019 elections to the European Parliament, the Green parties increased their power, possibly because of the rise of post-materialist values. Proposal to reach a zero carbon economy in the European Union by 2050 was suggested in 2018 and 2019. Almost all member states supported that goal at an EU summit in June 2019. The Czech Republic, as Estonia, Hungary, and Poland disagree. The less developed countries normally are disproportionately disadvantaged within the policy of environmental protection because, like I said, policy at the moment actually discourages development. Now, if you are actually a smaller country and you are not developing, you're not going to be competitive within the market, and therefore you're going to lose your power as a state, and potentially you're going to lose your sovereignty as well. You you can go extinct if you don't develop. And in June 2021, the European Union passed a European climate law with targets of 55% GHG emissions reduction by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2050. And also within the developed countries, they have the money to invest in new technology to manage uh, to produce goods and services uh, with limited impact on the environment, more than the less developing countries, which are suffering from poverty. They need to develop. They need to still they don't have the luxury of choosing. But also within the developed countries, there is a problem of neglecting the majority of the population to actually stop producing goods and services enough to reduce, because in the market, if you supply enough, then prices will go down. But if you hold supply, then there's going to be more demand for goods and services for products, and prices will go up. So poor people will even suffer more, and this actually also relates to the cost of living. Um, In 2021, the European Union and the United States pledged to cut methane emissions by 30% by 2030. The pledge is considered as a big achievement for climate change mitigation. Let us look at the economy of the European Union. And we're looking at things like GDP, PPP per capita in 2019, for example, including non-European countries. By comparison, the EU member states own the estimated third largest, after the United States, US dollar 146 trillion, and China US dollar 85 trillion net worth in the world, equal to around 1/6. That is US dollar 78 trillion of the US dollar 464 trillion global wealth. So, in short, the European Union is the third richest country in the world after China and the United States. The United States is number one, China is number two, the European Union is number three in wealth, in being wealthy. Of the top 500 largest corporations in the world, measured by revenue in 2010, 161 are their headquarters in the EU. So the EU, in terms of trade and business and development, is extremely important to the globe. In 2016, unemployment in the EU stood at 8.9%, while inflation was at 2.2%, and the account balance at minus 0.9% of GDP. The average annual net earnings in the European Union was around 25,000 euro in 2021. There is a significant variation in nominal GDP per capita within individual EU states. The difference between the richest and poorest regions, 281 NUTS, two regions of the nomenclature of territorial units, for statistic range in 2017 from 31%. Severo Zapadin, Bulgaria, of the EU 28 average 30,000 euro to 253%. Luxembourg, or from 4,000 euro 600 2006 4,600 euro to 92,600 euro. These are comparison between countries who are richer and not so rich, the EU and monetary union. Um, so talk about the euro, the economic and the monetary union, the members of the eurozone, ERM2 member, ERM2 member with opt-out Denmark, other EU members. The creation of a European single currency became an official objective of the European Economic Community in 1969. In 1992, having negotiated the structure and procedures of a currency union, the member states signed the Maastricht Treaty and were legally bound to fulfill the agreed on rules, including the convergence criteria, if they wanted to join the monetary union. The states wanting to participate had first to join the European exchange rate mechanism. To prevent the joining state from getting into financial trouble or crisis after entering the monetary union, they were obliged in the Maastricht Treaty to fulfill important financial obligations and procedure, especially to show budgetary discipline and a high degree of sustainable economic convergence, as well as to avoid excessive government deficits and limit the government debt to a sustainable level as agreed in the European Fiscal Pact. So you find that the monetary union and the convergence criteria, policy and practices, what it does, it actually expands the behavior of the market, of the capitalist, the mercantilist capitalistic approach in managing the economy. It's about cuts in public services, cuts in reduction in borrowing and taxation. And if taxation occurs, then it's actually supposed to be taxing the poor, and the rich who actually control the economy are not taxed. So these are actually, the disciplines required, the sustainability needed. Countries, on the one hand, are depending on debt or borrowing and taxation, but at the same time, the market doesn't want borrowing for public sectoral spending, but they also do not want taxation, except, any money spent by the government should be spent on capital development and market and private companies. They do not want the public sector spending. That's what discipline is called. That's what it means for physical discipline and monetary whatever, and including what they call the convergence criteria. Capital market. Let's look at capital market, unions and financial institutions. So we're looking at the capital markets union and European system of financial supervision. Also, we're looking at European banking authorities, European insurance and occupational pensions authority, European Security and Markets Authority, and Single Resolution Board. Occupational pension is actually the ones you get from employers. This is actually a watering down of the pension benefits for the many and only for the few. If you work in a big organization and you're paid well, then you benefit from it. But it's a departure from state pension also across Europe, whether they're in or out of the European Union, because a um, fundamental feature of, uh, of capitalism, of the market system, which policy and behavior actually is responsible for the cost of living. Free movement of capital is intended to permit movement of investments such as property purchases and buying of shares between countries. Until the drive toward economic and monetary union, the development of capital provisions has been slow. Most Maastricht, post Maastricht, there has been a rapidly developing corpus of ECJ judgments regarding its initial regarding this initially neglected freedom. The free movement of capital is unique insofar as it is granted equally to non-member states. The European system of financial supervision is an institutional architecture of the EU's framework of financial supervision composed by three authorities: the European Banking Authority, the European Insurance and Occupational Pension Authority, and the European Securities and Market Authority. So the primary motive for Brexit when Britain left Europe was free movement of people, to restrict free movement of people. But they wanted to stop people moving. It was actually immigration to stop foreigners coming into Britain. And when they talk of foreigners, they mean poor people, normal, ordinary people coming to benefit from Europe. So they didn't want that. But they wanted people who are rich, who can invest here, or who have technical experience, who can benefit the country. So free movement of people was the motive, primary motive, immigration, primary motive for Brexit. That's why within the negotiation, Brexit negotiation, they were actually focused on trade. They wanted free movement of things like capital and also investment. To complement this framework, there is also a European Systemic Risk Board under the responsibility of the central bank. The aim of this financial control system is to ensure the economic stability of the European Union. Eurozone and Banking Union. Let us look at Eurozone and Banking Union. Eurozone and European Banking Union. You have Eurosystem and Eurogroup. You have Euro banknotes from the Europa series since 2013. In 1999, the currency union started to materialize through introducing a common accounting virtual currency in 11 of the member states. Virtual currency actually are digitized currencies, which is actually a development across the globe. With the rise of technology, we are going away from normal money to digital money currency. We are actually getting rid of cash in the first place. There is coming a time you will not actually touch money in your hand as cash. In the UK, we are left with only 30% of cash circulation, probably less now. So we're going to be cashless as a society. There will be money, but this money is going to be digitized. Part of the disadvantage, the bank will have total control on your money. If you're not somebody important, if you just work for a living and you have maybe your salary, your life depends on the bank. The bank can actually deny you access to your money. and that will be the end of you. I mean, it's life. It's coming. That's the future. So people should prepare. I mean, I said the cost of living is a sign of the times. If we think the cost of living as a crisis is a temporary thing, maybe it is, but something worse than the cost of living is around the corner, because capitalism is a very chaotic system, and there will be a lot of crises associated with change, progress, and all that. In 2002, it was turned into a fully fledged uh, uh, convertible currency when euro notes and coins were issued, while the phase out of national currencies in the eurozone, consisting of then by then of 12 member states, was initiated. So they were getting rid of national currency at that time. The eurozone, constituted by the EU member states, which have adopted the euro, has since grown to 20 countries. Um, the 20 EU member states, known collectively as the Eurozone, have fully implemented the currency union by superseding um, their national currencies with their euro. So even when Britain was in Europe, it was not a member of the euro currency. So the currency union represents 345 million EU citizens. The euro is the second largest reserve currency, as well as the second most traded currency in the world after the United States dollar. So it's the second most important currency in the world after the US dollar. The euro and the monetary policies of those who have adopted it in agreement with the EU are under the control of the ECB. The ECB is the central bank for the Eurozone and does control monetary policy in that area with an agenda to maintain price stability. It is at the center of the Euro system, which comprehends all the Eurozone national central banks. The ECB is also the central institution of the banking union established within the Eurozone and manages a single supervisory mechanism. This is also a single resolution mechanism in case of a bank default. Let us look at trade. As a political entity, the European Union is represented in the World Trade Organization, WTO. Two of the original core objectives of the European Economic Community were the development of the common market, subsequently becoming a single market, and a custom union between its member states. Let's look at the single market of the European Union. The European single market, we're looking at also the digital single market, because we are digitizing the economy in the first place. The second, we also are digitizing the market and the currency, like we said, we show in the passing text. European single market, we look at it, the European Union states, and we're looking at the non-EU states which also participate within the European economic environment. The single market involves the free circulation of goods, capital, people, and services within the EU. The free movement of services and of the establishment allow self-employed persons to move between member states to provide services on a temporary or permanent basis. This is now restricted between Europe and Britain, the EU and Britain, and this is now causing a lot of crises within the NHS and within the public sector, um, because Britain has always depended on workers from Europe. It's a way of avoiding, because if you want to train professionals, it costs a lot of money to the country. You're better off actually getting medical doctors from Europe or nurses already trained, which it now doesn't get since Brexit. Such are the problem created by Brexit, and actually it is impacting on the services within the hospitals, within the local authorities, and many other parts of the country, in schools, and so on and so forth. While services account for 60% to 70% of GDP, legislation in the area is not as developed as in other areas. This lacuna has been addressed by the services in the Internal Market Directive in 2006, which aims to liberalize the cross-border provision of services. According to the treaty, the provision of services is a residual freedom that only applies if no other freedom is being exercised. Look at custom union, European Union, customs union, um, involving EU member states and non-EU member states, which are participants. This customs union, the customs union involves the application of a common external tariff on all goods in entering the market. This is taxation when you are actually importing or exporting things or products, goods and services. Once goods are being admitted into the market, they cannot be subjected to customs duty, discriminatory, discriminatory taxes, or import quotas as they travel internally. The non-EU member states of Iceland, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland participate in the single market, but not in the customs union. Half the trade in the European Union is covered by legislation harmonized by the European Union. The European Union Association Agreement that's sometimes similar. Does something similar for a much larger range of countries, partly as a so-called soft approach, a carrot instead of a stick, to influence the politics or in those countries. The European Union represents all its members at the World Trade Organization, WTO, and acts on behalf of member states in many disputes. When the EU negotiates trade-related agreement outside the WP framework, WTO framework, the subsequent agreement must be approved by each individual EU member state government. Let us look at external trade, common commercial policy of the EU. The European Union has concluded free trade agreement, FTAs, and other agreements with a trade component with many countries worldwide, and is negotiating with many others. So it trades with countries outside the European Union. The European Union services trade surplus rose from 16 billion US dollar in 2000 to more than 250 billion in 2018. In 2020, in part due to the COVID-19 pandemic, China became the EU's largest trading partner, displacing the United States. The European Union is the largest exporter in the world, and in 2008 was the largest importer of goods and services. So trade is critical in Europe, in the EU. Internal trade between the member states is headed by the removal of barriers to trade, such as tariffs and border controls. In the Eurozone, trade is helped by not having any currency differences to deal with amongst all member states. They use the euro currency. single currency, which Britain actually didn't have. Let's look at competition and consumer protection. Um, European Union competition law and European consumer law. European Union Intellectual Property Office also we can look into it. The European operates a competition policy intended to ensure undistorted competition within the single market. In 2001, the Commission, for the first time, prevented a merger between two companies based in the United States, General Electric and Honeywell, which had already been approved by their national authority. Another high profile case against Microsoft resulted in the Commission fining Microsoft over 777 million following 9 years of legal action. Let us look at energy policy of the European Union. See also the European Union Agency for Cooperation of Energy Regulators are looking at consumed energy in 2012 by percentage, looking at oil, gas, nuclear, coal, lignite, renewable, and other, whether they are domestically produced or imported. In 2020, renewables overtook fossil fuels as the European Union's main source of electricity for the first time in 2006. The EU27 had a gross inland energy consumption of 1,825 million tons of oil equivalent. In around 46% of the energy consumed was produced within the member states, while 54% was imported. In this statistic, nuclear energy is treated as primary energy produced in the EU, regardless of the sources of the uranium, of which less than 3% is produced in the EU. The EU has had legislative power in the area of energy, which for most of its existence, this has its roots in the original European coal and steel community. The introduction of a mandatory and comprehensive European energy policy was approved at the meeting of the European Council in October 2005, and the first draft policy was published in January 2007. The EU has 5 key points in its energy policy: increase competition in the internal market, encourage investment and boost interconnection between electricity grids, diversify energy resources with better systems to respond to a crisis, establish a new treaty framework for energy cooperation with Russia while improving relations with energy-rich states in Central Asia and North Africa, use and increasing renewable energy commercialization, and finally increase funding for new energy technologies. In 2007, EU countries as a whole imported 82% of their oil, 57% of their natural gas, and 97.48% of their uranium demands. That's why, in a sense, in Europe, particularly in the European Union, there was a trigger involving oil energy supply being interrupted due to the war in Ukraine. This interruption, in part, triggering the current cost of living. So the 3 largest suppliers of natural gas to the European Union are Russia, Norway, and Algeria. That amounted for about 3/4 of the imports in 2019. There's a strong dependence on Russian energy that the EU has been attempting to reduce. However, in May 2022, it was reported that the European Union is preparing another sanction against Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. It is expected to target Russian oil, Russian and Belarusian banks, as well as involve individuals and companies. According to an article by Reuters, two diplomats stated that the European Union may impose a ban on imports of Russian oil by the end of 2022. In May 2022, the EU Commission published the RE Power EU initiative, a 300 billion plan outlining the path toward the end of EU dependence on Russian fossil fuels by 2030 and the acceleration of the clean energy transition. You see, whenever Europe fights Russia over oil and other issues, the net beneficiaries are those in power, and the net affected are actually the ordinary people, as you can see with the cost of living. Let's look at transport. Transport in the European Union. We'll look at Trans-European Transport Network, and also look at European Union Aviation Safety Agency, European Maritime Safety Agency, and European Union Agency for Railways, and the Trans-European Transport Network. The European Union manages cross-border road, railway, airport, and water infrastructure through the Trans-European Transport Network (TEN-T), created in 1990, the Trans-European Combined Transport Network. TEN-T comprises two network layers: the core network, which is to be completed by 2030, and the comprehensive network, which is to be completed by 2050. The network is currently made up of 9 core corridors: the Baltic-Adriatic corridor, the North Sea-Baltic corridor, the Mediterranean corridor, and the Orient-East Mediterranean corridor, the Scandinavian Mediterranean corridor, the Rhine-Alpine corridor, the Atlantic corridor, the North Sea Mediterranean corridor, the Rhine Danube corridor, and the road transportation was organized under the TEN-T by the Trans-European Road Network. Bundesautobahn 7 is the longest national motorway in the EU at 963 kilometers and 598 miles. Look at satellite photograph of the port of Rotterdam. Maritime transportation is organized under the TEN-T by the Trans-European Inland Waterway Network and the Trans-European Seaport Network. The European seaports are categorized as international, community, and regional. The Port of Rotterdam is the busiest in the EU and the world's largest seaport outside of East Asia, located in and near the city of Rotterdam in the province of South Holland in the Netherlands. The European Maritime Safety Agency, EMSA, founded in 2002 in Lisbon, Portugal, is charged with reducing the risk of maritime accidents, maritime pollution from ships, and the loss of human lives at sea by helping to enforce the pertinent or EU legislation. Air transportation is organized under the TEN-T by the Trans-European Airport Network. European airports are categorized as international, community, or regional. The Charles de Gaulle Airport is the busiest in the EU, located in and near the city of Paris in France. The European Common Aviation Area ACAA is a single market in aviation. ECAA agreements were signed on the 5th May 2006 in Salzburg, Austria, between the EU and some third countries. The EEC the ECAA liberalizes the air transport industry by allowing any company from the ECAA member state to fly between any ECAA member states airports, thereby allowing a foreign airline to provide domestic flights. The Single European Skies SES is an initiative that seeks to reform the European air traffic management system through a series of actions carried out in four different levels: institutional, operational, technological, and control and supervision, with the aim of satisfying the needs of the European airspace in terms of capacity, safety, efficiency, and environmental impact. Civil aviation safety is under the responsibility of the European Aviation Safety. Civil aviation safety is under the responsibility of European Union Aviation Safety Agency (EASA). It carries out certification, regulation, and standardization, and also performs investigation and monitoring. The idea of the European Level Aviation Safety Authority goes back to 1996, but the agency was only legally established in 2002 and began operating in 2003. Rail transportation is organized under the 10T by the Trans-European Rail Network, made up of the high-speed rail network and the conventional rail network. The Gare du Nord railway station is the busiest in the EU, located in and near the city of Paris in France. Rail transport in Europe is being synchronized with the European Rail Traffic Management System (ERTMS), with the goal of greatly enhancing safety, increased efficiency of train transports, and enhance cross-border interoperability. Interoperability. This is done by replacing former national signaling equipment and operational procedures with a single new Europe-wide standard for train control and command systems. This system is conducted by the European Union Agency for Railway. These are infrastructure for transportation and related activities. And you have, in terms of transport and movement, that you have things like different type of documents for travel and transportation. Transport documents. You have European driving licenses, Croatian version, different type Dutch, different type like Slovak version. In different countries, you have the EU type of driving license. You have documents like disability parking permit in Poland, for example. You have example Polish version, European train driver's license, European drone license. If you have drone, you have to have license. You have different versions. Germany, where different areas. So let us look at telecommunications and space in the European Union. In the European Union, and European Union Space Program, European Union roaming regulations in the Internet Agency also for support for BEREC, European Union Agency for Space Program, and European Space Agency. Mobile communication roaming charges are abolished throughout the EU, Ireland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. So you roam not for free in these regions. ESA and EU member states, ESA only members, EU only members. The European Union agencies for space program USPA, headquartered in Prague, Czech Republic, was established in 2021 to manage the European Union space program in order to implement the pre-existing European space policy established on the 22nd May 2007 between the EU and the European Space Agency, ESA, known collectively as the European Space Council. This was the first common political framework for space activity established by the EU. Each member state has pursued to some extent their own national space policy, though often coordinating through the ESA, Gunter, Varugen, and the European Commissioner for Enterprise and Industry has stated that even though the EU is a world leader in the technology, it is being put on the defensive by the United States and Russia, and that it only has about a 10-year technological advantage on China and India, which are racing to catch up. Galileo is a global navigation satellite system, GNSS, that went live in 2016, created by the EU through the ESA, operated by the EU SPA, with two ground operation centers in Fusino, Italy, and Oberpfaffenhofen in Germany. The 10 billion euro project is named after the Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei. On the aims of Galileo is to provide one of the aims of the Galileo is to provide an independent high precision positioning system, so European political and military authorities do not have to rely on US GPS or the Russian GLONASS system, which could be disabled or degraded by their operations at any time. The European Geostationary Navigation Overlay Services, EGNOS, is a satellite-based augmentation system, SBAS, developed by the ESA and the Eurocontrol. Currently, it supplements the GPS by reporting on the reliability and accuracy of their positioning data and sending out correction. The system will supplement Galileo in a future version. The Copernicus program is the EU's Earth observation program, coordinated and managed by EU SPA in partnership with the ESA. It aims at achieving a global, continuous, autonomous, high-quality, wide-range Earth observation capacity, providing accurate, timely, and easily accessible information to, among other things, improve the management of the environment, understand and mitigate the effects of climate change, and ensure civil security. Thank you for watching this video. In the next segment of this video, we will look at agriculture and fishery and the policy associated with these activities within the European Union. Please subscribe to my channel and share with family and friends. Thank you. See you in the next one. Bye.